Now, there it is united. It's a million points. Not terribly high. You can see I've also added the wrap onto the hand. So if I get this first model here, or the second one, or the third one, there we go. So this version, I've already joined the vest with the torso. And the reason I want to use this is because this arm, let me turn some of this other stuff off. All right. It's not only penetrating into the body of our model here, it's also interacting with the vest. So when I do this Boolean subtraction, I want to make sure that I've got the final version of my torso with all the little bits and pieces on it, all assigned. Oops. All right. So I have to make sure that these parts are oriented properly in my list. So I'm going to select the arm and I'm going to move it up so that it's right under. And I'm also going to make a copy of my arm. Duplicate. Okay, so this is set up to create a Boolean subtraction from the torso. And if I turn my polyframes back on, you can see that that's white. And all I have to do is select. Got too much showing. Let me turn some of this other stuff off. All right. So now I just need to merge these two together. So make sure that that icon's on. Yeah, I'm good. So now I can just merge down. Okay. And now I can activate the Dynamesh. And there you can see the Boolean that it created, cut through the vest, cut through the body, made that nice socket into my arm there. And now here's the copy that I had made earlier of this. And I'm just going to move this up in the list so that it's right under the torso. Make sure I'm in the right place here. And I can do the same thing. Click on that icon. I can make sure that it's grouped as a subtractive object. Go to Polygroups and group as a Dynamesh sub, and it turns white. And now I just have to, whoops, I need to go up one more notch there. All right. So now I can merge down onto this larger version of my key. So merge down, okay. And now Control and clear. And this second key now is going to plow out that hole and make it just a touch bigger, so I have plenty of room for glue. Now you could create intersecting parts that have expansive and compressive joints, so you don't need any glue at all. It just snaps together. But for us hobby guys, this is good enough. All right, so now let's turn on the transparency again. And or even better than that, let me turn on this expose button. That's going the wrong way. Anyway, you can see how those two parts now will engage. And the nice thing about setting it up this way is, again, depending on the printer that you're using, on FDM machines, sometimes you do have to do a little afterwork sanding the post rather than the hole, because it's a lot easier to sand. Depending on the resolution, though, you generally don't have to do any hand finishing work. And on this version of the model, you can see I've already done this, where I've, again, broken the torso and the legs apart. So let's see here. All right. Now, I want to walk through this process of joining a variety of objects at one time. So now if I select his bottom half here, his legs, Actually, I want that one because it's got my key in it, right? I have other parts that are not in this particular file, so I'm going to go back. Okay, so I've got his pants and his rope belt and his shoes. Just a second here. Make sure I'm on the right file. Well, I'll add these parts in. All right, so let me click back over here. And I need his pants, obviously. I seem to have lost that part of the model. Well, here are his pants and the belt and the boots all joined together. They've all been Boolean together using Dynamesh. You know, you can look inside and say, oh, that's kind of rough. I'm going to smooth that out a little bit. Just using a smoothing brush. Doesn't really matter, but what's important is how these are now going to interface with the legs. I want to join them together. Okay, so I'm going to insert that file into this one, and then I'm going to go back to this one, and I'm going to select his belt. Come back here, and I'm going to insert the belt right under that. And then finally, I'll come back, and I'll grab his shoes, and I will insert the shoes there. All right. So I've got legs, I've got pants, and a belt, and shoes. So because as it's Dynameshing, it's recalculating where every point is and where it should be after everything's combined, and it's kind of like vacuum forming in space. It's crazy. It's math wizardry. I don't understand. So I'm going to do this in stages. It's a little bit easier. So first, I've got my pants and his belt, and I have already gone through and made sure that his belt is penetrating deep enough inside this so that it's going to join nicely. So all I have to do is merge them together. Go, okay, those are merged. And now I just have to activate the Dynamesh again. And maybe I'll go not quite all the way. Dynamesh. All right. Now, I'm going to undo that for a second and show you I lost some detail. Wasn't high enough. So I'm going to, again, when you get to this end of the process, it can become a little perplexing. Your list keeps getting bigger and bigger because it's wise at times to stop and duplicate the part that you're joining together so that you have something that you can then reproject back onto. So again, you'd be vacuum forming your new model onto the old one and extracting that information, baking it back into that surface that you might have lost. So I'm going to come back here and make sure. All right. So again, turn my blur off. I'm going to crank almost all the way. Hit Dynamesh again. And wait as it's calculating. Okay, that's done. And now I can compare the two. So my new model lost a little bit. If anything, I would want to overemphasize just a little bit, depending on what scale I'd be printing this at, so that the detail still can, work its way through any stepping issues that might exist due to the resolution of the printer. So I want to get that extra detail back onto my model. So I want to make sure that none of these other models are visible, and they're not. And I'm going to come here to these projection settings. And project all, again, is going to vacuum form my new model onto the old one, and we'll get some of that detail back. Again, this is kind of memory intensive, depending on how dense your model is. And it's giving you a little timer there. That's another 9 seconds. It's not too bad. I've had models that were very, very dense, and this process might take, 10 minutes. It's crazy. All right. So now I can compare. Yeah, I've still lost a little bit. So, well, in the interest of time, I'll stick with what we have here. All right, now I need to merge down and get my boots. Again, pretty simple. I'm just going to merge down. Okay, and again, Dynamesh, just going to control and swipe. La 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 la. All right, and now that's done. Those are all combined. Nice thing about Dynamesh is it doesn't create any artifacts. Sometimes when you're doing Boolean functions and other applications, that you're left with artifacts that are like, sometimes they're hidden. I know I'm a kind of a file doctor for printing and milling props for movies, and very often I get files that are from SolidWorks or Rhino that are just full of weird little artifacts that, you know, those designers are just going for look. That's it. They're just dealing with the aesthetics, and then they're handing that file off to whomever, and it's their problem now. So this way, it's nice and clean. Your projections are clean. Now all I need to do is join it on to my legs. Let me find the right set of legs there. Okay, so this one I can actually delete. Don't need that one anymore. Okay, so if I select my legs, again, and I merge down, and go OK, and just control and swipe. It's adjusting the mesh. All right, that was really quick. Now, my poly count actually went down. And the reason it did that is because you could see all of those legs, all of that, that's gone. It's gone. Doesn't need it. Takes all the geometry that's not needed. So all it was really doing was getting this top section and then the areas where the knees are ripped, and then getting rid of everything else. So it's also very efficiently distributing your mesh density. So now I end up with a very clean interior. So when I go to hollow this object out, I'm not left with some really strange, you know, inner areas that are going to become problematic. Let me put it to you that way. All right. So I'm actually going to quick save myself there. Now, if I want to create a hollow part, because obviously this model, this figure, he's got a lot of girth, right? I mean, you're not going to want to print that solid unless it's really small. So I want to hollow it out. Turn him back off. Well, this is super easy. And keep an eye on that active points count there, 2.7 million. All right. So again, I'm just going to dip into the old brush box here, and I'm going to grab an insert mesh. This is really nice. A lot of people just ignore this, but if your brush starts with an insert mesh, starts with I, you click on I, and it isolates everything that starts with I. So I'm going to grab an insert cylinder here. So if I hold down the Alt button while I'm creating this cylinder, it's automatically doing that, polygrouping it as a subtractive object. So it's white. You can see that. So what that's going to tell Dynamesh here, in just a second, I want to create a shell thickness. And set this up. I'll go 10. So now when I clear this mask by holding Control and swiping, and now instead of doing it again, if I did it again, it would create a negative there, but it wouldn't hollow out the whole thing. So I'm going to hit this Create Dynamesh Shell button. Last year I had the honor of prepping the animation models from Pacific Rim for Sideshow Collectibles. And those models had over 6,000 separate parts each, and none of them were closed. And it was already posed, so I couldn't just mirror it over. Ugh. Almost killed me. All right, now here is a version I did last night. And if I turn on my polyframes again, it's kind of hard to see because it's so dense. But I'm going to click on this interior section here because it does polygroup it when you hollow something out. So that's actually the interior shell that it created. And there's some interesting banding going on that I've had clients who are like, I don't like the fact that the inside of that shell is so rough. What are you, an amateur? So you can very quickly smooth these things out so you can get rid of these artifacts. If I go to the deformation menu here, and I could just hit polish, and it's just going to go through and kind of smooth it out. I can smooth it out by hand, like that. I'm like, it's on the inside, who cares, you know? Oh, he cared a lot. So I went around polishing the interior of all these objects. So now I did it this way, which actually creates a hole, because let's say I was getting this full color printed on a plaster printer. I don't remember now what they're called. They were Z-Corp printers. I can't remember what the new change is. Anyway, you want to have an opening that you can get the material out, because if it's a plaster print, there's going to be plaster inside this thing, powder, and that's not good. So you want to create, don't have to, I choose to, some place where they can, if you're doing a SLS nylon print, you definitely want to leave some void somewhere, just so they can reclaim their powder, because it would get trapped inside the thing. You can create a hollow shell with no opening. A lot of times I'll leave the end of my key open as a way to eliminate the printing material. All right, so getting close to the end of my time here. Let's switch over to this other file. Okay, now I'm actually going to turn that guy on. Okay, you'll notice, I hope you noticed, I'm going to toggle through two versions of this. Now this is the Dynameshed model here, and that's the decimated model. So I went from 7.2 million points to 218,000 points. Do you notice any difference? A little bit in the corners of his mouth. That's the super dense one. That's not. Now, the variation in that surface is so minimal that unless you were printing a rather large copy of this model, you'll never see it. So how do you get from 7 million crazy, 7.2 million points down to a much smaller thing? Well, these guys are such geniuses. They created a plugin called the Decimation Master, and it's very versatile and very powerful. Being a 7.2 million point model, I'm actually going to do this with the legs because it's a little bit lighter and it'll go a little bit faster. So I'm actually going to duplicate my model. So I have my original to compare it to. And I'll come up here to this Decimation Master plugin. And it's a two-stage process. You go pre-process, and then it's going to decimate it once it's done. Because this is super memory intensive. So I'm going to hit this button, and it's going to analyze the mesh. And so I've got my torso and my arm and my legs. And now I need to export those maps so I can print them. Before I do that, though, in the bottom of the geometry menu, there's a pretty new feature called Mesh Integrity. And I always use this before I start exporting my models out. So you just check Mesh, and it says, hey, that part's clean. All right? So then I'm going to go back to, say, probably because I've already cleaned these. I'll pick this undecimated version of the arm, and I'll check the mesh integrity of the edges, hopefully, so you can see that. Hey, the mesh contains 13 faces with multiple references to the same vertex. Oh, the mesh contains 35 edges that are shared by more than 2 lines. Oh my God, nightmare. Just hit fix mesh, and it's done. You're good to go. And, you know, I've exported parts out of here and then checked them in like Materialize Magics or Mesh Lab or something else like that. And yeah, it says, oh, well, you know, there's some problems. They always print. Printers have become very, very forgiving. So I've never had any issues exporting directly out of ZBrush and having it not print for whatever reason. So, so now I want to export my maps, my 3 parts there. And before I do, I'm going to go into the advanced options, and I'm going to some things. I do not want it to move to origin. This is on by default. If I did that, then all of my parts would end up at the world center. I don't want that. I want them to stay where they're situated. And I want to use the same bounding box for all tools. That's great. If I did per subtool, then they would all change their scale. I don't want that to happen. And you can select subtool size, which it sets the dimensions for the bounding box for the whole tool automatically, so it adjusts the scale of everything. And then you can come up here, whoops, and you can change your size ratio. Say, oh, this guy needs to be 10 inches. So change that. And since I have different instances of the same model here, different copies, I'm going to go with what's visible. And I just hit the Export STL button, and it's going to ask me what directory I want to go to. And I'm going to navigate to my folder. And I'm going to say, oh, let's go here. And I'll go, OK, just save it there, right? Files were successfully exported. So nice thing about this 3D Print Exporter is you can also import STL files, which is a great option. So I hit STL, and I'm going to that, save. It says it already exists. I'm going to overwrite it. Now I get this option box. So this is about naming conventions. So I'm just going to pick 2, use the subtool name for the file name, and it's just going to pop through there. Boom, boom. Hey, files were successfully exported. Again, now I'm actually going to go to a new setup here and come to the STL Import function here. Now I can see I've got these different files. So I'm going to grab that one. Says it was read successfully. So there, I've got my arm. And I'm going to import what I'm hoping is my body. Pachow! There you go. So, and I think I'm pretty much out of time. Let me just finish up by saying that I've used all kinds of different software. I was a traditional sculptor in the movie industry for 20-something years, and then switched over to digital. ZBrush is the only software I use that allows my brain to function the way it does when I'm sculpting by hand, whether I'm carving, modeling with clay, model making, foam core, whatever. It's exactly the same kind of mental process. The only difference is the toolbox and the medium. So it's a very versatile product. And they've been eagerly adding tools to facilitate 3D printing. ZBrush has been ahead of the curve here for a couple of years. So with that, I think I'm done. All right, well, my name is Derek. It's been a pleasure being first up here at Pixelogic. And thank you. Thanks, Bob.